Welcome to 75 Stories, a podcast created to commemorate the 75th anniversary of Normandale Lutheran Church in Edina, Minnesota.
I am Ruth Anderson, formerly Carlson, the daughter of Reverend Donald Carlson, who was the founding pastor of Normandale Lutheran Church. I was 3 years old when we came to Minnesota from California, where he had started another church that was very integrated with many nationalities. He was instrumental in getting the public health services to Edina, and that was because he was concerned about the homebound and shut-ins that were in Edina not receiving services. And so he met with June Schmidt, and they talked to Bloomington Public Health, who had the existing health department, the only one in the area, and then he got that contract made with Bloomington, and that was in the late 60s. And then in addition, then Richfield got pulled in, so that those three communities, Bloomington was the head, and Edina and Richfield got the services. That was Dad and June Schmidt who did that, and that way people like Elmer Soderberg, who was a shut-in, and people could receive public health nursing care as well as other services that they were not receiving. My grandma was a Swedish immigrant, my dad's mother, and she would come out to our house and she would make cookies. She would make piles of cookies, hundreds of cookies, and those cookies my mother would box up, and Dad would take these cookies on home visitation to people who were these shut-ins, and they were just overjoyed, more so even than receiving the communion that he provided, because they were such treats. One of the favorite things of my childhood was having a seminarian living with our family one summer. The larger church had this young man available to come, and he would be living with us in our home, and he was African American, and he was going to be doing evangelism and outreach for our church as this thriving church. There were some members who questioned how effective it would be to have an African American man make visitation calls in a white suburb. But he was perfect. He lived with our family. We had a 4-bedroom house. One of those rooms was a den. So my older brother and a new baby brother and I had to consolidate our bedrooms, and Lee took one of the bedrooms. We had one bathroom. Lee was like an older brother to both David and me. He played ball with us. David was eight or nine, and I was like 6 or 7. And he played ball with us. He played games with us. He was just a delight to have living with us. Because there were some questions about how our family would handle and what the community felt about having an African American man living in our home, it was clear from my dad that he laid down the law, so to speak, that this was going to happen. And if there were mutterings in other arenas, I didn't hear about it. Lee was a wonderful addition to Normandale Church. In relation to that concern that had been expressed, a year later, in 1955, when the annual report was made for the annual meeting, my dad wrote something to the effect that it helped us, that as a congregation, it helped our attitudes as we had Lee Wesley in our midst. That was his name, Lee Wesley. We hope that we have not been satisfied to just rearrange our prejudices. Our prayer is that we are more Christ-like in our ultimate toward all. At a later point, he said the church council and he felt that having Lee helped not only our congregation, but also the community to be more colorblind. For my dad, it was very important that people of all races and creeds be accepted at our church. Jesus Christ is for everybody.
We are so glad you joined us today here at 75 Stories. If you'd like to share your own story, please contact Christy Shepard at kshepard@normluth.org. Join us next week for another story, and share this podcast with your friends and family. We are all part of the Normandale community.